Hello there. Welcome in. Yet again, it is drive time on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. And yet again, Porter Larsen here, filling in for Spence Checketts as we close out July. Looking ahead to a busy month of August, including Utah Fall Camp. That's right. Football season is just around the corner. Dare I say, it's beginning to smell a little bit like fall. Even yesterday, thanks to a little bit of a summer monsoonal storm front, got a little chilly as I got rained off the tennis court. So we are fast ahead to fall and fast ahead to football. We'll do a bunch of that on the program today. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, Sammy Mora of Ute Zone will stop by the show. Ute Zone making a transfer over to On3. We'll give you the latest there. And, of course, go up and down the roster with our former intern, Sammy Mora, back here in studio. After that, we'll switch gears a little bit, talk a little hoops. Richard Smitty Smith, longtime Jazz front office man and assistant coach. Of course, no one better to talk to about the Jazz offseason, the NBA draft. Darren Peterson on site here in Salt Lake City and more. And then we'll finish it off with Paul Pugmire, a Uinta Golf, Utah Golf Radio PGA Tour leaderboard update. We'll give you the latest from Detroit and the Rocket Classic and tell you who is in contention there, and look ahead to what should be a fun weekend in the golf world as well. The Utah Royals fell 1-0 last night to the league-leading Washington Spirit. Real Salt Lake is back in action this weekend against St. Louis. That is a matchup between a couple of teams jockeying for playoff positioning in Major League Soccer. And, of course, MLS play returns. Now, RSL only comes back for one game following the All-Star break, in which Xavier Gozo had his All-Star debut. And they're back to Liga MX and Leagues Cup matchups. So kind of all over the map for RSL right now as far as international breaks and the like. We'll get to all of that on the program. And then on a Monday, Spence will be back here in the air chair. Tomorrow, we have ESPN Radio national programming, so you'll hear from Rich Eisen, you'll hear from Harry and the boys on ESPN Radio, and we'll set you loose for the final weekend in July. August 3rd, fall camp starts up on the Hill. Morgan Scally and Company, the start in earnest of the Morgan Scally era. We'll have interviews available for you up and ready at ESPN700sports.com, all of our podcast pages, and, of course, streaming live up on YouTube, where you can join us now. And that's where you can find all the podcast stuff as well. If you miss any of today's show, if you missed the prior show with Bill filling in for OC, he had a good one. Ryan Leaf, Gordy Chiesa, and more. All of those up and available on the website. I do want to, as we transition into this conversation with Sammy Mora, talk a little fall camp and get your guys' expectations. So here's what we'll do. We're going to open up the text lines today. Not for the entirety of the show, but definitely for this first hour and for this fall camp conversation with Sammy. And I want to know what you question the most, what concerns you the most. Hey, if nothing concerns you, if you think the Morgan Scally era is going to start off with a bang and there's nothing really of concern for you with Utah football going into fall camp, let us know that as well. But I want to know, when you look up and down the roster or up and down the coaching staff, which is just as fresh, maybe more fresh than the roster, where are your biggest question marks? I'll tell you what mine are. Sammy will tell you what hers are. But I want to hear from you as well. It's 877-353-0700. That's 877-353-0700. Your biggest question marks, your biggest concerns, your biggest excitement for Utah fall camp going into the 2026-2027 season, in which, of course, Texas Tech is the pretty much the odds-on favorite in the Big 12. Both BYU and Utah are comfortably in that next tier of teams that may be able to challenge them in the Big 12 and try to knock Texas Tech off at the end of the year, or, hey, maybe get a couple bids into the expanded college football playoff. That is the hope for all of these teams as we kick off fall camp and as we look ahead to kickoff officially. The Utes get going September 3rd against Idaho at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and man, that is coming up quick. 35 days from right now, you and your closest friends, 52,000 or so of them, will be gathered up on the hill at Rice-Eccles Stadium, and we'll be kicking off football season. It's crazy that it's already here, but it really is. And the Morgan Scalley era officially begins up on the hill. The Kyle Whittingham era officially begins at Michigan, and a whole bunch of other changes across the college football world. We'll get to all of it on the show today. I'll start with, I guess, my biggest question marks for the Utah football fall camp. And, of course, it starts at the offensive line. During Crosstalk with Bill, we talked about this a little bit. I don't have as much of a concern about the offensive line as I have questions, just because when you replace 5 players, 5 guys mostly to the NFL, and you have to replace their coach, one in Jim Harding, who is one of the more respected offensive line specific coaches in the country, there's just no easy way around that. Now, Morgan Scalley has been preparing for this. Utah football has brought in some really good recruits to be ready for this. There's a lot of confidence in Jordan Gross, a guy who has played the position as well as anyone who's ever been at the University of Utah. But he's only coached at the high school level, bringing in one of those highly touted recruits, of course, in Kelvin Obot. But until we see it on the field, until we see it at least in full practice coming up here in fall camp, there's going to be a lot of questions about what it looks like. Which 5 guys do you see out there? Which 5 guys do you see starting week 1, game 1, snap 1, drive 1? And are those the 5 we're going to see throughout the rest of the season? Now, you're going to get some different combinations. That's the nature of offensive line play. There's going to be a guy that gets rolled up on and has to miss a little bit of time. There's going to be a little bit of that throughout the year. There's no avoiding that along the front. So which 7-8 guys are ready to take reps, not just be starters, but take reps at the Big 12 level? For me, when I look up and down the roster, I am confident in the bodies they have in the room. There are quite a few guys who have taken those reps, but never as the starter, never in super meaningful football. And until we see that will be a question mark. Along the defensive line, of course, John Henry Daly out with injury the end of last year and now a Michigan man himself. Similar questions there. You return Carson Kafusi, Pupu Sepulona. You bring in a couple of transfers. And I think there's a lot of confidence in the Utes defensive line. Lance Holtzclaw, a guy who was pretty productive to start. Paul Fitzgerald. Ethan Day transferring in. There are bodies along the defensive line where you can move 6 or 7 guys through there. But who distances themselves? Who distances themselves as a playmaker, as a difference maker for Utah football in 2026 and 2027? For me, and this is kind of usually the case, because I just believe, and most coaches do, that it all starts up front. Those are the biggest question marks for me most years, almost all years, when we get this conversation going. It's almost every year that I'm saying, hey, show me what that front looks like, both on the defensive and offensive side. But that is only further the case this year. Of course, because of all of those things I just discussed. Jordan Gross, transfers out, transfers in. The Utah defensive and offensive fronts are going to look very different this year. Can they look similar in their production? Because if they can, then with the skill position setup that Utah has already in place, this could be a really good football team. A conference contending football team. But if it's maybe a little slow starting along the front on both sides of the ball, that puts a whole lot of pressure on your skill position guys on the offensive side and on your linebackers and defensive backs on the defensive side. Not only does it put a lot of pressure on them, but it closes up their playbooks. It closes up the options that Kevin McGivern and Colton Swan have as coordinators. And for me, that is why those are the glaring questions for the Utes going into fall camp. We're going to get to all of that with our friend Sammy Mora on the other side. Sammy, of course, of Ute Zone. She's dropping by in studio after being an intern here at one point. She's going to take over the air chair because, yes, while I am hosting, I'm also behind the glass today, doing a little double duty. So Sammy's going to be sitting in the captain's chair today. I'm sure she won't have any complaints about that. And we'll get that on the other side. But first, a Uinta Golf PGA Tour leaderboard update. Join Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf Shops today for the latest deals on Ping, Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Mizuno, and more. Club fitting technology, 90-day satisfaction guarantee, golf simulators, indoor hitting bays, full-service club repair and regripping, indoor putting greens, and experienced service professionals serving Utah golfers since 1971. It is Uinta Golf and uintagolf.com. At the Rocket Classic in Detroit, Michigan, and the Detroit Golf Club today, round one is mostly finalized. A lot of guys already in the clubhouse. Peter Malnati, your leader, he shot a 61 in the first round. He is 9 under. And how about this? Ricky Fowler, 7 under, shooting a 63. He's tied with Ryan Garrard. Patrick Fishburne, our local friend, at 6 under, shot a 64 on the afternoon. And shooting a 65, a whole bunch of Americans. Michael Brennan, Michael Kim, Chris Kirk, Keegan Bradley, Doug Gim. It's a loaded leaderboard up there, guys that are 5 under or better. We'll keep you posted on the Rocket Classic in Detroit, Michigan as the show goes along. And Paul Pugmire will join us to discuss after round one. Richard Smitty-Smith also stopping by in studio, talking some Jazz and NBA offseason, and we'll go from there. Sammy Morris stops by on the other side from Ute Zone, right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's The Drive, today with myself, Porter Larsen, on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back. It's drive time. Thursday afternoon here in the studios of ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. It is Utah's number one sports talk in your home of the Utes. I think 70 years or so. Call AM, of course, FM on the 92.1 side. We're talking Utah Fall Camp in this hour. And to do it with us, from intern to taking over the captain's chair, one Sammy Mora in studio. How is it going, Sammy? Good to have you.
I'm great, Porter. You know, it is weird to be here because the last time I was here, I was actually standing where you were standing, interning for one Mr. Bill Riley back in the day. But it's fun. It's good. I'm excited to be here. I'm super excited for football, but yeah, it's gonna be fun. I'm looking forward to today.
Yeah, you obviously not your first time in studio, but your first time in that air chair. Take us back to intern days. You did most of it with me, I think.
Yeah, I did. I like 95% of it, I think, was with you, and I was intern here spring of 2019. I was going to
ask what year because it flies by.
I think it was spring of 2019.
I think you were jammed as an intern between Jalen Johnson and one of our current part-timers. So.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to follow Jalen. Like, I feel like that's a really high bar to set, and then.
I mean, as a cornerback.
I could not do that.
As an intern, Yeah. he was here getting credit. I'll just say that.
I mean, many memories were made in this studio. A lot of fun times were had. I think this is actually where I met our partners over at Ute Zone, and they hired me because they met me here. So This place opened a lot of doors, literally and figuratively, for me. So.
And you still found your way up here through the maze of doors and the maze of carpet cleaning today.
I literally went through my email and I searched back to my internship email that my offer letter, and I found what floor you guys were on because I could not remember for the life of me.
Well, we made it happen. We appreciate you being here in studio, and I think the topic of conversation today, as you'd expect, is fall camp. We are within a week from Camp Scally, Camp Morgan, Camp whatever we want to call it.
TBD.
I've been very used to Camp Kyle. Of course, I mentioned it on the show yesterday. Kyle Whittingham was hired in the summer, fall of 1994, and then 2 months later, I was born. Right? So be patient as we find it a little odd, some of the things that we see, including that guy wearing blue. I never saw him in BYU blue, so him wearing Michigan blue is just another thing that just is going to take some getting used to.
Those photos of Kyle in Michigan gear, it still feels like it's like a really bad looking Photoshop edit. I'm not used to it. Like it's one of those things that my brain just isn't processing and hasn't processed. And I don't think it will process it until maybe a year or two from now. It just feels weird. Like I watched him today at Big Ten Media Day, and I was like, this is funky. I don't like it, but
maybe this is me being what a young called me recently, an old century person, which means, I was born in the 1900s. I got to see it in person. If I don't, I got to see Kyle on the sideline, and it's not on TV because it just feels like a simulation or something. I might have to go to the big house and see Kyle on the sideline in person for it to be real for me, if that makes sense.
I mean, I'm surprised someone didn't call you Unk because I got called Unk the other day.
Are you an old century person?
1999.
Yes. Do you take offense to that term?
I mean, I used to, but now I'm kind of the shoe fits at this point.
Yeah. I saw a LeGarrette Blount Jr. Recruiting profile today. So yeah, we're old. We're
Donovan
washed.
McNabb Jr.'s son committed to UNLV.
A little less crazy. Donovan's an unk.
Yeah.
Donovan's an old head. But LeGarrette Blount was playing college ball. It was before I was covering football, but I very much remember that.
Oh yeah.
Our guy Stevenson Sylvester, now officially a papa, another year older. We had him on the show yesterday, and we're talking about how there are now kids in the Muss who were not born when Sly was taking the field for the Sugar Bowl.
It's weird, like, especially since I cover recruiting so much and so often. Like, it's so looking at like birth years now of kids, I'm like, this is insane. Like, it feels so weird. It's like one of those things where you're like, oh, I'm never gonna get to that point, and then when you
Right.
get to that point, you're just like, what the heck is going on?
And when you are like signing up for something online and you have to put your birth year in, and now it feels like you're scrolling forever. Now, listen, I'm 31, 30 something. So it's, I may be embellishing here a little bit, but it does make me feel really old. The sports world specifically, because everyone's so young. These are now, I guess, by all intents and purposes, semi-pro athletes, but they're still 17, 18, 19, 20 years old. Even the pro athletes who are not LeBron are usually 25, 26, 30s. Not many of them are good enough to play 34, 35, 36. Those are kind of reserved for the best of them when it comes to pro athletes. So sports specifically will make you feel old very quickly.
100%. I think that you hit the nail on the head with like younger age kids, because like I watch a lot of NHL hockey, and like some of the better teams like the Sharks and stuff are so young.
Yeah.
Like they are, I'd say this.
The
like,
Mammoth too.
Yeah, like babies. Like they are children. And I say that as someone who's not in her 30s yet. I'm like, you guys are all so young. But it's like, it's really interesting to see how, sports have evolved too, because it used to be like, the older you got when you got into these leagues and stuff, the more veteran you were and the more relied upon you are. But now it's like, once you hit a certain age, like, hang it up, bud. Like, it's time to bring some young, fresh blood in there.
Well, and there's something to the difference in athletes now. Not how good you are at basketball or football as a sport, but now there are decades going into your specialized athletic ability and training and just the evolution of how good these kids are as athletes, where, yeah, maybe back in the 60s and 70s, if you had really good footwork and really good fundamentals, you could kind of keep up on the NBA floor. Nowadays, you've got a floor full of guys that are 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", can jump out of the gym, can handle the ball, can move. That just wasn't the case 30, 40 years ago. So, yeah, the leagues just keep getting younger and more athletic and making us feel a little older.
Well, and like the football front, it's like you see these kids playing 7-on-7 at a young age. They're starting to, work with coaches, work with, trainers, all these types of things. Like, it happens. It's insane how it shifted, because I played soccer growing up, and I was never dreaming of being like, every kid when you play sports, you're like, I'm going to play pro one day.
Oh, yeah.
But I was like, never like.
Yes, I was.
I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to play for the U.S. national team in the Olympics as a soccer player who's 5'2". Like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, looking back on it now, I'm like, why were you saying that? But I think that if I really wanted to be in that position, my parents would have been like, okay, well, we got to get you in camps. We got to get you with trainers. We got to get you in all these other things and stuff that's just not. It wasn't as common when I was playing, 10, 15 years ago, which is insane to say. So,
yeah. Now, these specialized camps and coaches and all of the above, a lot of benefits to that. Mm-hmm. There's also some negatives there where we're starting to monetize and corporatize not just the NIL stuff at the college level, but there's a lot of money in the private coaching stuff and the AAU stuff and the circuits and the off-season travel ball in youth sports, sometimes to the detriment of just the sport and the development of the sport and the inclusion of a lot of kids in the sport. That's probably like a whole radio show that we could do. We're not going to get into all of that, but there are a lot of positives, especially if you're really, really good. Mm-hmm. And then there's also some negatives where, either kids get left behind or daddy makes a $6,000 donation this year, so you're on the team no matter what. And the kid who could have a future in the sport is at home because his mom can't afford that, right? Can't afford the travel ball. It's complicated, but I think if we could put some guardrails on the college stuff, it would help maybe with how crazy the youth sports world is right now as well. All right. Utah Fall Camp starts August 3rd. Is it July 30th?
It is.
31st? 30th. So we're there. We got through the doldrums of summer. We got through all the dog days. We got through, thankfully, we had World Cup action. We had some good golf. We had RSL. We've got a lot of stuff to get us through the summer. And, of course, the offseason news cycle that just didn't stop. Kyle to Michigan, Big 12 stuff, Brendan Sorsby, all of the above. We had plenty to talk about all summer, and now it's here. We got kickoff in 35 days, Sammy. I asked the question on the text line, and we'll get some responses from there as the show goes along, and, of course, as this hour goes along. Biggest question marks and concerns that remain for Utah football. When we start camp, we're going to have quite a few of those. When we end camp, we hope to have a bunch of those answered. Where, and I assume your answer is going to be similar to mine and similar to a lot of our texters, where is your biggest question mark? Call it a concern if you want to, but mainly a question mark about Utah football's roster. And if you want to go onto the sidelines and talk coaching staff as well, where's that biggest question mark remain for you?
Honestly, I think the biggest one is just offensive line. I think that's the one that has most of the fans' attentions. It's not like it's a completely barren room. There's guys that are in there. Keith Olson has played a lot of snaps for Utah. Solatoa Moyai has played a lot of snaps for Utah. Cedric Jefferson from Montana State, he played a lot last year for their national championship run. So there's reps that are in the room. It's just there's not a lot of starting experience, I think, is the biggest concern. And over on Ute Zone, we've had a lot of back and forth about, the state of the offensive line, whether it's who starts at tackle, who starts at guard, who starts at center. I think that there's a lot of different mixing and matching that this coaching staff, and specifically Jordan Gross and Alex Gerge, can do. Because you have Zaraway Williams, who's played a lot of football for Utah, but he hasn't stayed healthy.
Right.
Then you have the young gun, Kelvin Obot, who is the first ever composite 5-star to sign with Utah, who has high expectations for himself, high expectations to play as a freshman.
And history with the O-line coach.
Very much. Jordan Gross was his high school coach at Fruitland up in Idaho. And so if anyone knows what Jordan looks for in an offensive lineman who's going to start, it's going to be Kelvin. So you have that. You have, Roger Alderman, who's played a lot. Isaiah Garcia, who has been, just embattled with injuries throughout his career, and now it looks like he's finally turned that corner. I'm trying to think of who else is in that room, but there's a lot of guys in that room. It's just a matter of finding which 5 are going to give Utah the best chance to win. And then when you get into that second line, it's the same thing. It's going to be a lot of mixing and matching because Utah does a lot of cross-training with their guys. So you have guys that are, playing left guard, right guard, and center. And then you have guys that are playing on both tackle spots. And then you have those guys that know all 5 positions like the back of their hand. So it's going to be mainly about figuring out which 5 give Utah the best chance to win. Because if this offensive line is even, slightly above average to average, I think that Utah's offense is in a really good position. Because you have so many weapons for Devin Dampier to use. That wide receiver room, and I will keep saying it, I think this is one of the best wide receiver rooms Utah's had on paper in the last 10 years. Wayshawn, Daniel Bray, that running back room, also good. The tight end room with Semi Taulunga, Sione Motupuaka, the Rhino packages and stuff they can do, Hunter Andrews. The weapons alone should make Utah fans very excited for the season. And if this offensive line can figure it out early, I think that this is all systems go. Yeah,
and I mentioned that on the opening segment where if the offensive and defensive lines are up to par early on in the year, it allows Colton Swan and Kevin McGivern so much freedom to install more things, to open up their playbooks, right? It's definitely the biggest question mark right now, that offensive line. But as you mentioned, there are 6, 7, maybe 8 guys that Utah's comfortable throwing out there. It's just a matter of seeing it on the field and seeing which 5 work together, with what formulation they are actually in, who is there, who is here. The big thing with the offensive line that, especially once you get beyond the high school level, the complexity of the offensive playbook, the communication and the chemistry between those 5 different guys, the identifying of blitz packages on the other side, pre-snap stuff, pulling guards, right? The complexity of offenses, specifically for the O-line, once you get into the big leagues, which we are very much in Big 12 football, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not, simple mesh blocking. It's not simple gap coverage. It is a literal full-time job to learn, repeat those steps, and then get comfortable doing it at game speed. I think that early on in the year, as you just kind of mentioned, there could be some growing pains, and there probably will be some growing pains along the offensive front. But with the way Utah's schedule is lined up, they kind of have that ability to, whether you beat Arkansas or not, regardless of how the beginning of the schedule goes, you have a little bit of a cushion there to get things going, especially, Sammy, with an expanded college football playoff, the Big 12 stuff. Like, just focus on conference play. Use this preseason. I know it's not technically a preseason, but use this out of conference as a true preseason to see what this offensive line is made of and maybe experiment a little bit. If you don't know for sure which 5 guys you want out there, throw 7 or 8 out there and see what works. See what works at game speed. See which one of these guys are gamers and which one of them is really confident in their knowledge of Kevin McGivin's system. I think that for the first few weeks of the season, I might not even watch Devin Dampier, right? I'll do it on the replay. I'll do it in film after the game. But when we get down there and we're at Rice Eccles Stadium watching week 1, my eyes are going to be locked on that front 5.
Well, and that's you bring a good point about like mixing and matching early. I think that especially in that Idaho game, you might see different combinations that are rolled out there to, figure out what works and what doesn't. But I will say, I can't remember which player it was at Big 12 Media Day, but one of them said, I want to say it was either Devin or Wayshawn, said that the offensive line, they know how everyone's talking them down, and they know that, and they're very well aware of it. And they are taking that as massive motivation heading into this season because they want to prove all these people wrong. And, that is also encouraging because there'd be some offensive lines who would be like, oh, well, like, whatever, they're just fans, like, what does it matter? But, like, when you have national pundits also saying that has to be motivation. We talk a lot about bulletin board material, and if that's not the biggest piece of bulletin board material for an offensive line I've ever seen. And when it comes to, the technical side of it, Dan Sorensen, our publisher over at Utah, during spring.
Shout out, Dan.
Yeah, shout out to Dan the man. He spent all of spring practices, the times we were available, watching the offensive line and watching Jordan Gross and Alex Gerke coach these guys up. And Jordan does a really good job about getting in there and, like, showing the guys visually what he wants them to do. It's not a lot of just, like, I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. It's an actual, I will show you. I will get on this sled and I will do it myself.
And I've done it myself at an all-pro level for a decade in the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Well, and
there's some weight that comes with that direction.
Well, and that's part of the reason I think that you didn't see you lost one guy to the portal from the offensive line, but you didn't see much, if any, turnover on the offensive line this offseason. I think part of it is because of Jordan. It's not every day you get to be coached by an all-pro tackle who's a first-round draft pick at the university that you're now playing at. Like, that's like a lightning in the bottle type of situation.
Right.
So I think that that's something else that kept this offensive line so together during the offseason. And Jordan, from the looks of it, I think that Jordan he knows what he's doing. And like you said, he's played at the highest level. He understands what he's doing. So that's something that, also gives me a little bit of confidence.
Well, and I'm sure, as you mentioned, a little chip on the offensive line's shoulder when they hear, not me speaking down, but me having questions about what they're going to look like. Jordan Gross has got to take that as a challenge as well. Mm-hmm. And the fact that he's replacing a guy in Jim Harding who doesn't have the name ID necessarily that Jordan does from being an all-pro lineman. Jim Harding is, in my estimation, a top 5 offensive line coach in the country and was for a long time. There were, I'm going to say, 6 or 7 Power 5 programs that tried to pull Jim Harding away from Utah during his stint here. There were two, and I can guarantee you there were two NFL teams that tried to pull Jim Harding away during his stint here at Utah. Kyle was able to do it. Go to Michigan. Come to Michigan with me. And those are big shoes to fill. Even if you got the big shoes that Jordan Gross has, those are big shoes to fill. And it's a guy who, while he's done it at the high school level, a high level of high school, it's different when you get into Big 12 play. And your adjustments are now not at halftime when you're eating oranges with your 17-year-old seniors. Your adjustments are now every play, every drive, every offensive adjustment, every defensive adjustment you see. That's a different ballgame, and I'm really excited to see Jordan Gross with that challenge and with that opportunity.
Yeah, and like you mentioned with Jim Jim is one of the two coaches that I personally think are the biggest hits going to Michigan. I'm not counting Kyle. I'm talking just assistants alone. I think it's him and Lewis Powell are the two that I think have the biggest implications of leaving.
Probably agree with you, yeah.
But the thing, Jordan knows that he has these shoes to fill. Jordan knows that, Jim is known for being this high-level recruiter, high-level coach, all of these things. But I think that's encouraging, and I think that's a nice little challenge to him. And I remember during spring he said, we asked him about recruiting, because offensive line recruiting has been a massive part of Utah's philosophy for the last, 10 years, 15 years maybe? Actually, probably longer than that if you want to get technical, if you go back to the Gross years and the Zane Beadle years and all those times. But he said that if a kid doesn't want to come to Utah, he's not going to recruit him. And he also said, I don't get discouraged by other bigger teams that are recruiting these kids.
Right.
You saw that this offseason. You had Ty Kennedy it was Utah, Washington, Michigan, all after him. There was a bunch of high-level offensive linemen that Utah was invested with, connected with. It's the same thing. My brain just short-circuited for half a second. But it's
NIL era too.
Yeah, true. And
there may be some investment there.
True. But that's the thing is he's not afraid of those big teams. And he's not going to back off as soon as Michigan offers. He's going to be we're going to try and get this kid.
Right.
That's also encouraging, because there would be some coaches, and I'm not saying it happened at Utah, but nationally there are probably schools that are oh, well, this school offered, okay, we're going to back off now. We're done. We can't handle that. No, Jordan takes it as a challenge. So we'll see how it goes. I think that there's talent in the room. I think that's the moral of my long rants I've had is there's talent in this offensive line room. It's just a matter of finding the 5 guys that can do it the best.
I'm with you. And although I could talk offensive line all day, and we just did for the entire first segment, we'll get to some other stuff. We'll get to some texter questions on their concerns heading into fall camp as well. I see your Post Malone shirt. Did you make it to the concert?
This is from the concert.
Okay.
Yes.
There we go.
Yes.
There we go. I guess that was the unofficial kickoff at Rice Cycles this year.
Well, they did Monster Jam on the 4th of July.
That's true.
So.
I think they still do AMA Supercross there.
Yeah, they did that too. And then someone else, some country artist is going to be at Res next week. I can't remember. I can see his face in my head. Zach Bryan.
Oh, Zach Bryan's doing the stadium thing, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll take a break. We'll be back on the other side with Sammy. We'll talk some more Utah fall camp, get some other position group discussions going, and check in with our text line. Of course, your biggest question marks for Utah this offseason. It's 877-353-0700, and we'll check in with you next. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence on The Drive on Utah's #1 sports talk in your home of the Utes. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. A little Post Malone bringing us back in for Sammy. Never been to a Post Malone show, but we have a mutual friend. So I've actually met him in a setting where I'm not a board game guy. I'm not like a I don't want to say nerd games, but it's called Magic the Gathering.
Oh, I know of Magic.
Was in a group and we're playing that, and Posty takes that game very seriously. I learned. So there you go.
Me. I've been to every show he's done here.
Okay, good. So you're a fan.
Fan. I think the only one I didn't go to is his Hollywood is Bleeding tour, and it was because it got canceled because of COVID.
Ah, that happened.
Yeah.
That happened to a few things.
A lot of things.
We don't have to revisit that.
Yeah, let's not. That's a trauma. That's trauma time.
We spent the first segment there with Sammy really talking mostly about the offensive line and the questions, concerns we have. I think the defensive line on the other side is similarly the big question there. I'll get your take on this, but it's not that there aren't the bodies there. Pupu Sepulona returning, Carson Kafusi, a guy that's back after a lot of reps, Lance Holtzclaw, a lot of confidence in what he does. But beyond that, there are a lot of new faces, including 3-4 transfers that you are probably going to expect to see at least take some reps for Utah. We'll get into the defensive backfield because I think there's some questions there as well. Maybe the linebacker positions 2, 3, 4, and how you look at the depth at linebacker. But for me, similarly to the offense, it's the front on the defensive side that brings me the most questions.
I like to separate the defensive line into, the two groups. You have your edge rushers and then you have your interior tackles. And I just want to say the work that they did in the interior tackle room this offseason, I really enjoyed what they did. Obviously, I think the biggest issue last year with the defensive tackle room was just the lack of size. Jonah Lea'ea, great bend, just he could never put on the weight. And I think that came back to bite Utah in the butt a couple of times last year. Carson and Kapupu, who you already mentioned, you're relying on two true freshmen to come in and make a massive impact for your defensive line room. I don't think that was the boldest. I don't think that was the greatest strategy. And then you had Aliki Viamahi, who Aliki was a really great player, but he could never stay healthy. So I think that was just a mixing of not the greatest situations that led to what we saw in the defensive tackle room last year.
Right.
But I love the bodies and I love the different versatility you have in the defensive tackle room this year. Obviously, you talked about Carson and Pupu. Carson looked, I don't know, did you see him? Did you go to any spring practices?
I did see him at spring. He looks the part.
He looked like, how they talk about man strength?
Yeah.
That you get between your freshman and your sophomore year. Yeah, he got that. He looks completely different. He has changed his body, and he made the leadership council. There's a lot of things a lot more expectations that are going to be put on his shoulders this year. So I like what I've seen from him in spring. I liked what I've seen from Pupu in the spring. And then you mentioned the transfers. You have John Moy from San Jose State. You have Lucas Samsula from Wyoming, and you have Jamal Wallace from Tennessee. I think that all three of those guys you're going to see this fall as well. Personally, I'm the most excited to see Lucas and Jai. Lucas hangs his hat on being a run stopper. That's what he's talked about all the time. 6'4", 306, big dude, big guy. If you put him and Carson next to each other on that defensive line, I think you're in for a good time because Carson's 6'6", 305. That's some big guys up in the center of that line. No, I don't think people are going to be able to run on that size alone. And then Jai, 6 foot, around 280, 290 pounds. People are kind of, sleeping on him. They see that size. They see 290. They say 6 foot, and they say that's he can't play defensive tackle at this level. But when you have members of the Utah offensive line saying consistently that he's the hardest guy to block, that should start sending some alarm bells into your head about what he could possibly do. He had the highest win rate of any defensive tackle in the country last year at San Jose State. That alone is also very encouraging. So the different bodies you have in this tackle room, much more encouraging than last year. Jamal, he obviously made waves this offseason with that video he posted a couple weeks ago from inside the football facility when he was doing the gap reading and stuff on the big screen that Morgan had installed.
Which is cool.
He had that installed, how many years ago?
I was going to say, they've been doing that for, I want to say 3 or 4 years. But cool to see folks see it, right? See it in person. I'm sure Morgan would have loved to be like, hey, let's keep that to ourselves. But they're not the only ones that do that.
And you and I have seen that screen. Like, we walked in for a press conference, and all of a sudden there's this giant screen.
What's that?
Yeah, and we're like, where'd this come from?
Right.
And they're like, yeah, Morgan got it installed for the defense. We were just like, oh.
I was like, for photo shoots and stuff, right? No. It's to give guys partly, yes, they've used it for photo shoots, but also, you can get a little bit of a better feel with a certain camera angle and a little more realistic look at your steps and your pace and your timing and your read of an offensive line or a defensive line if you want to put the offensive guys up there. It's pretty cool.
It's really cool. It's literally like a whole wall. It's massive. But then you have your edges. So that's kind of me touching on the defensive tackle room. But the edges, I like. Again, Lance Holtzclaw, sent to Big 12 Media Days, sent to speak before Congress to represent every single student-athlete nationally.
Right.
Which is some big pressure to put on kids' shoulders, but also, like, Lance handled that so well. Cash Dillon, fans should know that name. He's been around the block for a while. I think this year's the year for Cash.
It's got to be.
It's got to be. He's another one who's completely changed his body. He's gotten into a much better shape when it comes to playing. I think that the game has really slowed down for him, which defensive tackle and defensive end are one of those positions that when things really start slowing down, it's when you see kids finally start to break through.
Well, and for Cash, I will say he probably would have played a little bit more and a little bit earlier if it weren't for the body, right? Mm-hmm. And it's nothing against him. He showed up looking like a high schooler. Showed up looking like a receiver, right? And he's put in the work and I think is ready. There was never a question about his ability as a defensive end, as a pass rusher. It was about getting some weight on him, getting some strength on him so that he can go up against Big 12 tackles and do it down after down after down. It appears he's done that.
Well, and he has the motor. That's another thing that you need to see from a defensive end is a high-level motor, and Cash has that. Like, he does not quit. He played a little bit last year, especially when John Henry Daly went down. Yep. You saw him and Lance, their reps start to increase. But Cash has all the potential. He has all the raw tools to be a high-level defensive end. I think it's just been a matter of when the light bulb is going to go on. And I think that this year has to be the year for him. And then you have Paul Fitzgerald, obviously. He missed most of last year. I think he played like 3 or 4 games last year.
Yep.
And Morgan said that at Media Day, he was playing his best football before he got hurt. You know, obviously we don't know what the injury was that knocked him out and where he's at. But, you know, Lance said he's back to practicing with the team. He's practicing. He's in meetings. He's doing everything. So can Paul also crack that rotation? And then you have Ethan Day, North Texas transfer.
Probably him and Cloward that are the next two, right?
Yeah, it's my
Could be
take.
A field of folks.
My take is it's going to be the 4-man rotation is going to be Ethan Day, Lance Holtzclaw, Cash Dillon, and Paul Fitzgerald.
I agree.
That's my take. It's going to be a lot like again, it's going to be mixing and matching because there's going to be situations where they're going to want their 2 biggest guys on the end. There's going to be situations where they want the speed guys on the end. There's going to be a lot of just what Utah's always done with the defensive line. They've done it with the tackles, they've done it with the ends, and I think that's what's going to happen again this year.
And not just having a rotation of 6-7 guys that you're comfortable throwing in there. I think what's really important this season is whether it's Lance Holtzclaw, whether it's someone on the interior, there's always got to be someone that separates themselves along the defensive line. That turns into your Lecky Fotu, your Bradley Anai, your Mika Tafuas, right? Your John Henry Daly. Regardless of how solid your front is, giving up 2-3 yards of play or less is awesome. You also need a game breaker. You need a difference maker. You need a guy getting in the backfield and causing sack fumbles, getting on the football. I don't know who that is yet. That is one of my biggest question marks. Not necessarily if they have the guys on the defensive line. I think they have a good roster to choose from. But who is that guy along the defensive front? That's my question there.
Well, and I think last year everyone was like, who's going to be the defensive end that breaks out? And we heard going back to spring, John Henry Daly's name.
Yep.
Like that was the name we kept hearing over and over and over. And then it came to fruition in the fall. I honestly think that the two most likely candidates for, that breakout sack leader is going to be either Lance or Ethan Day. I think those are the two most viable options in my opinion. Ethan played a lot of football last year for North Texas.
Yep.
A lot of football. And I know that the level of competition at North Texas is not the same as the level that he's going to play here at Utah. But I've heard a lot of things about him specifically that make me think that he's going to be a great leader for this defense overall.
Should we ask some texters?
Yeah.
Spencer, thanks for texting in. And thanks for the compliment. We appreciate that. But to answer your question, Spencer says, I am most worried about the D-line. I know everyone is concerned about the O-line, but don't forget we basically gave up 1,200 rushing yards over the final 3 games of the year, and we lost Henry Daly. Valid.
Very valid.
Take us into those last 3 games, Sammy. What the hell happened?
So,
because he's right. That was interesting to watch.
I remember leaning over and looking at you during that Kansas State game, and just the eye contact that we shared was just ingrained in my brain. But anyways, I think a lot of it came down to twofold. One, losing John Henry Daly, because as much as a pass rusher he was also there to help in the run game. And by that point of the Kansas State game, he already had double-digit sacks. Mm-hmm. So teams were double-teaming him, which was allowing, John O'Hall, other guys to get open and get in through those gaps and get stopped in the run. But the thing is that I've heard from many people, and I've also seen it many, many, many times on film, because I've went back and watched that Kansas State game specifically more times than I want to count. There was not as much gap integrity up front with the defensive tackles. There were guys that were not holding their proper gaps, their proper lanes, which is then getting the linebackers caught up in the wash, the safeties caught up in the wash if they're in run support, and that's leading to big gaps. It doesn't help that there was also some poor tackling in the secondary from certain players. That was also part of the issue.
Yes.
So I think that if your defensive tackles this year can be even 40% better, 50% better at keeping their gaps and holding their lanes, I think that the run defense is going to be a lot better, because John O'Hall's going to get in there. He has a nose for the ball. He's going to get there and he's going to find it. Trey Reynolds at linebacker, he's also going to find the ball. Cyrus Palu, if he plays, he's going to find the ball. So the biggest thing for me is gap integrity. And if they can keep those gaps and hold those gaps, I think run defense is fine.
And then, as you mentioned, an X factor there is that guy who attracts double teams, who is that game changer, completely changes the way an offense game plans against him and makes life a whole lot easier on your linebackers and you're the defensive linemen. So that's another reason we like to look out for those.
Yeah, if Jai starts commanding massive double teams, mm-hmm. you put him out there, you let Jono go get loose.
There you go.
He's in the backfield, you're not running the ball.
Jono, again, who I think is still coming into his own, playing the linebacker position as a whole. But, man, when he is allowed to just pin his ears back and get into the backfield and find a nose on the football, really fun to watch.
Well, and I think Jono takes a lot of the blame for last year in run defense where he shouldn't.
Fair.
I think I try not to criticize kids too deeply, especially kids that are not with the program anymore. But I think a lot of the issues stem from Jonah Lea'ea. Just his sheer size, he just wasn't able. Guards and tackles were just pushing him around, and it just led to, not great gap integrity.
Alan Jarvis, another texter, has the same question. D-line, have they fixed the run defense? We just kind of went through a bunch of that. Well, Alan, we're going to find out. September 3rd against Idaho, of course, our first look at it. And Sam and I just broke down a whole bunch of the defensive line. Texter Taylor, one question I have is, if Dampier is fully healthy heading into the season, that will dramatically impact what and who we see, and if we see more of Bird Ficklin. Yes, but I will say that regardless of, now let's be clear, if Devin isn't healthy, he is, by the way, he's as healthy as he's been while on campus at the University of Utah, at least as of today. Regardless of Devin's availability, Utah's going to get Bird Ficklin involved, whether it's taking snaps or not. I'm curious to see what that looks like, because you're also going to try to get Hunter Andrews and Nate Johnson and Semi Tuolonga and all these different unique weapons involved. You're going to try to get those guys out there. But Bird Ficklin commanded such gravity when he had the ball in his hands last year, even in just direct snap situations, that regardless of Devin's ability or whether he's on the field or not, you're going to see Bird Ficklin and you're going to see plenty of him.
Well, and I agree, like, Devin is as healthy as he's ever been, based on conversations I've had with people. And, you know, obviously we've seen him at Big 12 Media Days. He was talking about how he was healthy. It's spring. He was talking about how he feels better. So Devin's great. Devin's good. Bird is going to get his still. Bird didn't not come back to just not get his. There's going to be, just like it was last year, I fully believe there's going to be certain packages that we see that are Bird packages.
Yeah.
That are just going to get the ball in his hands.
And help Devin Dampier stay healthy by not doing so much in the designed run game, especially early.
Also that. But also, maybe a hot take. I want to see Bird throw the ball a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because we know what we have, what Utah has is with him as a runner, but what do they have with him as a passer?
No, I'm with you.
He hasn't passed the ball that much.
And on top of that, there was an aspect last year where when you saw Bird in the game, you're like, oh, we kind of know what's coming. Now, it didn't matter. Teams still were not stopping it because he's so explosive and so quick. But there was an aspect of a little bit of guessability when Bird was in the game, where he wasn't throwing the ball much, and you kind of knew he wasn't in there to do that. A look towards the future, maybe, when we see a little bit more of Bird Ficklin letting it loose down the field. That would be cool.
He attempted, I have my season stats right here, 35 pass attempts, 21 completed for 301 yards.
Yeah.
A long pass of 41, though. So.
And one of the things was that you saw sometimes, like, the deep ball sometimes looked better than Devin's. Devin also didn't have a plant foot.
Yes.
We now know that. We sometimes didn't during the season at points, but
and I was looking hernia.
Right. I was looking sometimes in Devin's long balls, they looked like punts, and I was a little concerned about that. I'm curious to see what that looks like fully healthy, because Devin Dampier could look like a different quarterback in himself as well. Texter 4694. I'm more concerned about special teams. Again, what used to be a very solid, almost a standout unit, no matter what for Utah, has kind of been a struggle last half decade, maybe, in a lot of facets. So he is concerned about that. I will say Dylan Curtis came in as a true freshman and looked the part. Mm-hmm. I only think you're going to see him get better. I think the kicking game will be solid and reliable. Mana Carvalho in the return game, Daniel Bray in the return game. Who else do you think you may see in some of those roles?
I think those are the two biggest ones that are going to be fielding punts, kicks, stuff like that. But I will say, on the Dylan Curtis note, him or his kicking coach posted a video on Twitter yesterday, mm-hmm. and Dylan said, "This is the first kick this first 60-yard kick I'm attempting since I had surgery." Okay. So
this is part of the context.
So
yes.
There's some breaking news, maybe. I don't know. But if obviously he was dealing with something last year that led to him having to have off-season surgery. But I think that part of Dylan's issue, I think, last year was he didn't get a kick as much as we hoped he would have, which I think hurt his confidence.
Right.
Because if you're only attempting, 15 field goals attempted last year, 11 of them made. Like 15 is not a large number to attempt. And I know people are like, well, Kyle should have kicked the field goals versus BYU. Yeah, he should have. But the reason why he didn't is because he didn't.
Analytics.
Porter, I don't want to hear about analytics. If I never have to hear the word analytics again from a head coach,
I had to.
I will live a better life. But that's the thing is he didn't get into that rhythm because sports is all about rhythm. No matter what position you play or what sport you play,
kicking 15 field goals is not a rhythm. Yeah,
no, it's not. So you need to get into that flow and into that routine and stuff because we heard last spring he was hitting 60+ yard field goals. So we know the leg is there. I think that the confidence that he had heading into the season was severely damaged.
And then holding and snapping. Logan Castor and Orion Phillips, of course, the punter. Confidence there. Those guys have been doing it for a minute, and I have no reason to believe there's any questions there. I think the special teams unit, it's not going to be Tom Hackett and Britton Covey and, the kind of units that you've seen in the past, but I think it also won't be a detriment, which we have seen in some of the more recent years.
The less we see Orion Phillips this fall, I think the better.
Well, yes.
Like I want to see him.
Also,
I want to see him. I want to see him on like holding the kicks and stuff. But like other than if we can have another one of those West Virginia games where he's tweeting after the game like, "Am I ever going to get the ball?" Like, because he tweeted that because he didn't punt that entire game.
Like, no, dude, we don't want you to.
Yeah,
respectfully.
If we don't see him, I think Utah fans are pretty happy.
Yep. Any other question marks you guys have? Text in 877-353-0700. Sammy and I will get to them on the way out. Speaking of that skill position group, what outside of what we've mentioned are you really excited about? Devin Dampier, seeing him fully healthy, of course, is a big one. How involved Bert Ficklin is going to be is huge. I think Wayshawn Parker has taken a step during this offseason and is now not only focused on being a bell cow, but a kid who probably wants to play at the next level and will have to prove that he's capable of that. I think where the question is something that you mentioned on the inset, a wide receiver room that you think is talented as any of the last half decade or so here at Utah. It's just formulated with a couple returners, but the main card for the receiver room are transfer ins in Braden Pagan and Kyrie Scholes. What are your expectations of those guys in the wide receiver room as a whole?
Well, you didn't mention Ricky Johnson, the Mississippi State transfer.
Yep.
Like, he was one of the hottest names in spring camp. Like, Devin talked about him. Chad Bumphis talked about him. The other guys in the wide receiver room talked about him. Ricky's gonna have some targets this year. He's
only a sophomore too.
Sophomore, yeah. Electric with the ball in his hands, by the way. Just body control that I haven't seen that type of body control in a long time. But Braden Pagan also has the same level of body control. And with Braden, I think the big thing is his familiarity with his offense. He knows what Kevin McGivern wants from his wide receivers. He knows how to do it. He was asked to be kind of a leader on this team this spring to kind of bring guys along, get everybody on the same page with the playbook, all those types of things. So Braden's also going to be a big part. Kyrie is kind of those ones that I think there might be too big of an expectation put on him right this minute. I think Kyrie needs to work on some things before, we can start targeting, Utah can start targeting him 4, 5, 6, 7 times in a game. Ball security, route running, just the normal things that you need to see from a wide receiver to put them on the field and have that trust. But returners that you mentioned, obviously Creed Whittemore, who I think should have been seeing the field a whole lot sooner than he did last year. But that's a story for another day that, again, another thing that you and I could have a whole radio show about. And Larry Simmons, or as over at Utah, what we call him, Touchdown Larry, because that's all he does is score touchdowns. Larry is also another one of those guys that I think made a massive step. Watching him in spring, he looked so much more comfortable and a lot more confident than he did at this time last year. And I don't know if it was because everything was so wide open last spring in the wide receiver room or what it was, but Larry, I think, is going to... I honestly, if I had to say right now who my starting 3 wide receivers are, I think it's Braden Pagan, I think it's Larry Simmons, and I think it's Creed Whittemore.
And you mentioned the confidence for Larry. Some of that's got to just come with production. I mean, to actually go out and do it, show what you can do, you come back with, a chip on your shoulder to prove that you're still the guy when everyone's talking about the other receivers that are now in your room.
Well, we didn't
that's
even
gonna
talk
be cool.
about Nate Johnson.
How do you how you get him involved in different ways too? Daniel Bray, a guy who, yes, a running back, but can catch the ball, do some things in the backfield. The tight end position, we talked about Hunter Andrews back healthy, Noah Benny, and then the Rhinos in air quotes. I mean, Utah's got a lot of toys to play with, and Jason Beck was as creative and fun of a play caller as I've maybe ever seen at this level in doing exactly that. How does Kevin McGivern do it? It might not look as cutesy, right? Like I was watching film the other day and there was the Jason Beck play where he handed the ball off into a triple option, right? There was Semi in motion, flipping around and then catching the ball out of the backfield. I don't know that you'll see as much eye candy with Kevin McGivern. That's kind of Jason Beck's calling card. But I do think you'll still see a lot of creativity in getting all those guys involved.
Well, and one of the biggest criticisms I had heard about Beck was his route trees. They weren't very complex, and they were kind of easy to dial in on and stuff. So I'm interested to see what the route trees look like under McGivern. Because, like, obviously, when we're watching spring, you see a little bit, but you don't know the full route tree or you don't see the full playbook or whatever. So route trees is what I'm very interested in. And again, it's McGivern has said he wants to get the ball into the most, like, not the most talented, but he wants to get the best 11 on the field at any given time, just no matter what the play call is. So if it's a run play, this is just me making something up. What's to say we don't see a run play that has Wayshawn, Devin, Bird, and Bray all on the field? Because one, that's a lot of speed. Two, that's a lot of people hard tackles that defenses are going to have to make. So it's just going to be fun to see how they mix things up. Because like I said earlier, I don't think I've seen a Utah wide receiver room as talented as this. I have some slight questions about the tight end room behind Noah Benny, but I think that will figure itself out. Yeah. I think Will Monty and Bear Fisher, I think they're going to figure their stuff out. Bear had some really impressive catches in spring as a true freshman. So where do they fall in the pecking order? Do they see time? Especially with the 5-for-5 now in play, it serves your best interest to get someone like Bear on the field early.
The tight end room was also very much a Whittingham experiment between Freddie and Kyle was really involved as well, where he loved multi-tight end sets and getting those guys involved. In the pass game, yeah, Dalton Kincaid, we know, but also just as an extra blocker and whatnot. So I'm curious to see how different that looks with Kevin McGivern.
I do think we're past the – sorry, one last thing.
Go ahead.
I do think we're past the days of seeing those 13, 14,
Stop
15 personnel sets.
I want 15 personnel.
I think we're past those days, Porter. And I'm sorry.
I think you'll see less of them. I think with the personnel that Utah has, you may see a few of them this year. But you're not going to see sometimes the entire first drive, if defenses weren't stopping you, 13, 14 personnel. Oh, yeah. I do think you'll see a couple multi-tight end sets. I think with Semi getting him involved, you may see a multi-tight end set where then a guy motions into the backfield and becomes a fullback. Those are things you'll see from Kevin McGivern, but it'll look different. And yes, you won't see the amount of jumbo packages, especially not on the goal line going forward.
You're not the days are. I think that days are gone of either your top receiver or your second best receiver being the tight end. And I know that makes you really sad, so I apologize.
If it's Semi, then yeah, let's keep him there. I want to see Semi Tuolonga the leading receiver for Utah next year.
If Semi's the leading receiver, then there's some things that really went wrong with the wide receiver room.
Or we have a groundbreaking, game-changing, glass ceiling breaking situation with what we call the Rhino.
That everyone nationally is going to try and copy afterwards.
Of course, but they won't be able to. Sammy, intern, now Ute Zone reporter. Let the folks know where they can find your stuff and how they can find it. And if you got deals, whatever it may be. I know On3's got some stuff rolling.
Yeah. You can find us over at utezone.com. We are a member of the On3 family. We made the move over a couple months ago. But if you want to join the greatest community on the internet for Utah fans, I encourage you to come over to Ute Zone. 50% off your first year subscription is running right now. Starting next week, we are hitting the ground running. If you can think of a football story, it will most likely be written. We also cover a lot of recruiting. We have a lot of exclusive interviews with recruits. I did a series this summer where I interviewed the high school coaches of all the recruits that Utah landed.
There we go.
Getting some more information about them. So you like recruiting, you like football, you like basketball, you like women's basketball, you like gymnastics, you like softball, you like volleyball, just come over to UteZone. If you like Utah athletics from top to bottom, just come join us. You can follow us on Twitter at UteZone. And you can follow me on Twitter at S_Mora on 3.
Sammy Mora, my former intern, now with UteZone. We're going to get a bunch more from her as fall camp rolls along and as we inch towards kickoff. 35 days, folks, from Utah and Idaho up at Rice Eccles Stadium. Sammy's going to leave that air chair. Richard Smitty Smith is going to take it over on the other side. It is ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back in. It's drive time on ESPN 700. Porter Larsen here, filling in for Spence Checketts on this Thursday afternoon. If you missed anything from the first hour or so of the program, it was all Utah football. Previewing fall camp, which starts next week. That's right. 35 days away from kickoff up at Rice-Eccles Stadium. We are inching in on football season. That interview with Sammy can be heard up and available on the website a little bit later on, ESPN700sports.com. And, of course, wherever you happen to podcast, just search for The Drive. Now, we're going to talk some hoops with our next guest, but I also know Richard Smitty Smith likes him some Utah football, likes him some college football. 35 days, Smitty. Are you going to be up there?
First of all, Porter, 35 days. This countdown, when did we start this countdown? Was it 100?
99.
It was 99 days.
Yep.
And now I blink, I take a nap, I wake up, and it's already 35 days.
Crazy, huh?
Yeah, it's
time flies when you're gallivanting around the world and at tennis matches and in cruises and eating caviar on the French Bay.
You know, if I could deny any of that, Porter, then I would. But you know, sometimes you just got to stand up and take it like a man. You know. But I like the fact that I come into the studio. You're still working the board. You're working like 5 jobs at once. I don't know if ESPN 700 knows all the stuff you put into making this stuff go every day, but you do such a fantastic job. And you're back there working all the magic, and you sit me down in Spence's chair for the day. Say, hey, just sit here next to the console. But
don't press any of those.
You sound like just like I say to my wife when we get in my car, and you said to me, don't touch any buttons. Don't push anything. Don't turn anything.
I got that.
I'll do it all. Just sit there and talk into the mic.
Yep. So. That's all I need from you. Same with Spence. When you start pushing too many buttons in there, makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah, I got you. I understand what the deal is, man. 35 days. Wow. Look at this.
What are you most looking forward to? You're a guy who, you know the coaches in this community, right? Yeah. There's kind of a coaching fraternity, if you will. You're in some circles with those guys. You knew Kyle and I'm sure know Morgan a little bit.
Sure.
How do you feel about this transition and getting it official?
Well, I think it's great for the University of Utah because I think it's as smooth a transition as you could get when you're talking about having an institution like Kyle Whittingham walk out one door and then Morgan Scally walk in the door next one down the hall. It doesn't matter. He knows the deal. He knows the layout. There's no learning all the logistics and all the kind of stuff, the school, the admission policies, the program itself. Everything is just lockstep with from one group to the next. A lot of the coaches went to Michigan. A lot of them stayed. Morgan's got it set up, with his guys, and they start on Monday. And, of course, they've been in town all summer working on various things, but the official start of camp on Monday, and it couldn't be a more seamless transition. So we'll just see when they roll the ball out in September, how the guys respond and who's healthy and how they can kick the beginning of the Morgan Scally era off.
What might your expectations be, right? A lot of folks are expecting that the transition, which we talked about, the actual how it happened wasn't it necessarily so seamless, right? Sure. With it being questionable at the end of the year and not really knowing which way it was going, and Kyle up and leaving, there was some friction, not necessarily in the football program, but with the administration and whatnot. So that part of the transition was not so seamless. From Kyle to Morgan, just from a football perspective, that is where you kind of expect things to just get off and rolling and not have too many hiccups. But at the same time, man, 30 years under the same guy, there's going to be something different. There's going to be some changes that we expect and maybe some growing pains as well. A lot of fans have really high expectations of Morgan in year one. What say you as a guy who you have actually seen transitions of power at the high level of sports and how difficult that may be, even when you kind of think you have everything in order and you're confident with the guy that's coming up next, it can still be a little tricky to actually instill and install a new era and a new persona, a new identity on a program.
Well, I think it's going to be as easy as you can get it. Morgan knows all the main characters involved in the program, and by that we mean the coaches he retained, the new guys he brought in, a combination with all the key players that they brought back, especially the two quarterbacks. All that stuff is going to go as smoothly as it can. They know each other. They've worked with each other before. So that part of it is going to be easy for them in terms of just getting on the same page with the nomenclature and how they make calls and how they train every day and all those kind of things. So that part of it, I think, will go as smooth as you could possibly have it. When they get in games, Porter, you never know how it's going to go. You never know when they have that first kickoff, even though it's against a Division 1 AA school like Idaho. There's always trepidation because you have no idea how your guys are going to respond. You don't know how the jitters are going to come out in the first game. Even though it's at home, even though they'll be heavily favored, the guys want to get in a flow. They want to get something going positively under their new head coach. But I expect it to go very well for them. I have no idea how to predict the Big 12. We saw that just a couple of years ago, Porter, when Cam Rising was coming back and the U was ready to rock and roll in the Big 12 and all that, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, they're down at the bottom of the standings and at the end of October because of the injury to Rising and all those kinds of things that just kind of crop up that you can't control. So how will the season go? I have no idea. I expect them to be very well coached. They're well organized. Everybody in the program knows already, what the expectations are from Coach Scally and his staff. And now it's a matter of going out there and executing when the first kickoff comes in early September.
September 3rd, Idaho
3rd.
Vandals will be at Rice Cycle Stadium against the University of Utah, just 35 days from today. Of course, I'll have the pregame coverage. Smitty will be in the middle of the muss, I'm sure, the student section.
Where I always am.
Shirt off, waving
That's
it
right.
around.
That's right. Now,
face paint.
Hey, Porter, so you've seen me. You probably
I
have
saw you
pictures
there
of me
once.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to call you on one thing, Porter. I don't know if this is your thing, if this is somebody else's thing, okay? Well, they are starting camp on Monday. Monday is August 3rd.
Yep.
I keep hearing the phrase fall camp. Porter, we are right in the middle of summer.
We are.
The fall doesn't start until after they've already played 3 games. So this is summer camp or this is training camp. We got to get the right nomenclature. We got to make sure we got everything in place, including the guys who are plugging the program day in, day out. 35 days away from the kickoff, 4 days away from the start of training camp, of summer camp, whatever we're calling it. Porter, we're hyping it up. The U is going to have a big season this year, and I'm excited to see what lies ahead.
The issue with summer camp is that it sounds a little bit like you're sending your kids off to eat peanut butter jelly sandwiches and have a chaperone take them on a hike.
There we go.
And play at the river and learn how to make a basket
do
or
the
something.
Ropes course, yes. And
that's
get out
what
in the canoe,
summer camp
and
is.
There you go. Yes.
Fall, while from a astronomical situation,
I want to
starts September 20th or so.
Yes.
Fall camp for football next week, my man.
Yeah,
That's next week.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about the nomenclature.
Look, I'm swimming upstream on this, okay? But I hear this all the time. The NFL, whatever, they're in fall camp. Dude, it's training camp. It's training camp. Come on. What is this fall stuff? We get ahead of ourselves. But hey, I'm excited for Morgan and his staff and for the University of Utah. Fans are going to see an exciting brand of football, especially with the 2 quarterbacks coming back. That's going to be exciting for everybody to see how they, now are integrated.
Yep.
They know what their roles are. They know who's doing what at what time during the game, who's coming in, subbing for each other in terms of game situations. That's going to be the fun part to see, because last year we didn't really know about Bird Ficklin. We didn't know what he could actually bring to the table until he was kind of forced into it a little bit in the middle of the season with the Dampier injury. And so he came in, showed what he could do. Then they tried to blend the two of them. Now they've got the full off season that we've had. They're going into training camp next week. They know how to work with each other, kind of a tag team type approach. And it's going to be fun to see that when they've got all that kind of a practice behind them and working out all those kinds of kinks to see how they can enact that right from the start.
Yeah, I'm excited for a lot of things, but for sure Morgan Scalley at the helm to see after a long time of hearing a lot of confidence in Morgan what he can actually bring. On a similar note, we get to see Will Hardy in 2026 and 2027. We'll call it without draft positioning, breathing the headwinds at him, right? That's something I'm really excited about with the Jazz upcoming season, which actually in the fall, in October.
There you go.
That's also coming up quicker than we may think. Summer
September.
League is in the rear view, and we'll see Jazz basketball in just a matter of a couple months. And I am really excited to see Will Hardy, not just Will Hardy, but also Lauri Markkanen and this Jazz roster with, from what we understand and what I believe, just looking at their timeline and the roster they have, a little bit more competitiveness, a little bit more of an angle to win basketball games and be in the conversation come spring. That's something that really excites me and really gets me going towards a basketball season that, I'll be honest, Smitty, the last few years has been kind of hard to act excited about.
Well, it hasn't been kind of hard. It has been hard, and and especially the way they approached their business and all of that we've gone over on the show before. But now, they say those days are behind them. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. They have a lot of expectations with the guys coming back, with Markkanen and Keontae George, who they like with his improvement last year, and then the acquisition, of course, at the trade deadline of Jaren Jackson, who we really like as a player, and now the addition of the number 2 pick in the draft, Darren Peterson. So you put all these guys together. I personally, and I've spoken about this before, disappointed in the move they made with Walker Kessler. I thought that was the wrong move. That's my opinion. I think if you're going to be a serious team and have serious aspirations about competing, he's exactly the kind of guy you need in the middle defensively for what was, in the last couple of years, a very poor defensive team. Okay, so you got rid of one of the main defensive guys. Okay, I don't know how you explain that away, but okay, that's what they did. That's a decision they made. They've got a lot of draft picks out of it from the Lakers, but the draft picks are 5, 6, 7 years out. I mean, I don't know, what those don't do you any good right now, because you got to play games right now and you got to play competitive games. So you took away a main cog. All right, so we take that, we put that aside.
Can we talk about that for a moment?
Yeah, whatever you got. Yeah.
I because from a basketball point, we're just talking 48 minutes on the hardwood. You're not wrong. Walker Kessler leaving Utah is a net negative. They are not as good today as they were 3 weeks ago before that trade was finalized. I think the asking price that LA decided to come up to and give Utah was something you had to consider, even if these draft picks are further out. The versatility it gives you on the roster side, right, where you now still have an option to go get a star, to go get a offseason free agency move, to trade during this span. You still have that roster flexibility, whereas if you give Walker what his agents were asking, you do lose a lot of that flexibility at a time when maybe you're not quite ready to compete, right? You're getting closer, but maybe you're not quite ready to compete. And for me, the injury is one thing. I had no real concerns about Walker coming back to full strength at some point. But I think for a pretty defensive-centric center, he's probably more fluid and has a higher ceiling offensively than, say, a Rudy Gobert early in his career. Yeah. But he is still a defensive-centric center who hasn't made an all-star team. It was a big asking price that they were hoping for. Whether that was from Walker or from his camp, they ended up getting it in LA. But for me, it would have been tough for me not just to turn down what LA was offering, but also to free up or to lock up 30% of my cap in a player who I like an awful lot. Let me be clear. But that much of your cap towards a guy who is limited on offense and is coming off of an injury already and not quite what I think is an elite center. I think he's probably in that second tier of really, really good NBA centers. It was an unpopular take of mine before the trade happened, but I struggled if I put myself in the GM shoes to sign that much of my cap to a guy that I do like an awful lot, but I think it's part of where the game is. I said the same thing before Rudy Gobert was traded. I liked Rudy a lot. He's shown in Minnesota he's worth about every penny of that contract. It just, when you put that much of your cap towards one player who, for the most part, does the most of his damage on one side of the floor, it does limit your flexibility, your roster optionality in a lot of ways. Well,
first of all, the Jazz offered him a contract for 5 years for $140.
Yep.
So it was about $28 a year. So they had made that commitment in that regard to him, right? They had told him, here it is, we want you. What I believe, and I don't know this, okay, so I'm highlighting that phrase. I don't know if this is what happened. Looking at all the machinations that took place, I'm guessing, trying to read the tea leaves, is that the Walker Kessler camp didn't want to make a 5-year commitment to this group, to this organization, that they wanted a shorter commitment.
Yeah, it could be part of it.
And so they got the deal that ended up being worked out was a 4-year deal with a player option of the 4th year. So it's really, Porter, a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
And so to me, it seems like the Kessler camp didn't want to make the 5-year commitment. Okay, they wanted a shorter deal so that they could hopefully cash in on the next contract,
right,
when there will most likely be a new CBA and most probably more money in the pot. Okay,
yeah,
that's the way I read it. However, having said all that, the commitment by the Jazz was going to be, you're talking about $28 million a year, $32 million a year that he got. That's nothing in the NBA salary cap world. So to me, that wasn't an issue. The issue was really the number of years they wanted to commit. And my take on it and my posture, if I was in the room, with the guys who were trying to make this decision, is that we have 3 years with this guy, meaning Kessler, to go with the group we've got under our belt already, right? Markkanen, Jackson, Peterson, George, that group. We put him in there. We have 3 years to figure it out. 3 years to show our competitiveness, to show our ability to try and win games, to start getting up that pecking order, if you will, in the Western Conference, because that gives you, Porter, if you are working hard and you got a good group that likes each other and they are working toward the same goal, that gives you as an organization 3 years to convince the guy, if this was the case, which, again, I don't know if it was or not, that he wants to be here long term because he's playing with guys that he gets along with, guys that he's now having success with, and now entering his prime. He would be one of those main guys you would hope that you grow in your program. I just think that was the Jazz made a different decision. That's their call, obviously. I just think that they had the opportunity to grow that now and get that train going. And in my opinion, the way they handled it was they decided to kick the can down the road, to use an East Coast phrase. And that to me was disappointing, because I think that just means the fans have to wait longer to see some kind of advancement or climb up the ladder, and I think that's a disservice to the fans. I think it's a disservice to your sponsors, your season ticket holders, your suite holders. Those people are looking for stuff to get excited about, and everybody's being told this is it now. This is it now. Here we go. Okay, by the way, we're getting rid of a guy who we're telling you all along was part of that.
Right.
So that, to me, is the disappointing part.
I think you hit the nail on the head in a couple of ways. Number one is that it showed us that the Jazz timeline might be a little further out than even we think, right? Yes, they are trying to be more competitive this year, but if we're asking Danny Ainge or Austin Ainge in a truthful moment, we give them some truth serum, they may think the timetable is a little bit further out than 2-3 years. It might be 4 or 5, and they kind of showed that with what they were willing to do with Walker. And on another note, Smitty, what you pointed out is that, well, a deal takes two parties. It takes two sides of it, and there was an openness from Walker Kessler's camp to go to L.A. There was clearly at least they were clearly okay with looking at different options and seeing what they could get on the market. And it takes two to tango when you're trying to create a deal on free agency. All right.
But remember, Porter, this is the important thing. We've talked about this before on the show.
Uh-huh.
The no matter what was going on, people were pointing fingers. People liked each other. They were, kumbaya. They didn't like being in the room with each other during this negotiation. Whatever that tone was, which we have no idea what that was in the vernacular. But what the bottom line is that he was a restricted free agent.
Yep.
So no matter what was going on, the Jazz had the final call on how this was going to play out.
Could have matched any offer.
They could have matched any offer. They could do anything. They can do what the Detroit Pistons are doing at the moment with an all-NBA guy in Duran, who is still sitting out there, who the Pistons are not in any hurry. Why is that? Because he's a restricted free agent. Because the Pistons know, with Dennis Lindsey in one of the driver's seats in Detroit now, they know we call the last shot. So we're going to end up with whatever we want to have happen going forward. The Jazz had that same situation, and at some point, again, don't know what those deliberations were, what involved those, but at some point, the tone of the Jazz turned from offering a deal, saying we're making this 5-year commitment, we want you, you're part of our core, we've got our owner, we've got our president of basketball operations on the air with our own Spence Checketts saying, yeah, Walker Kessler, he's one of our guys and all this, and 10 days later, it's different, it's changed. So whatever that was, don't know, but that tone change, and as a result, your team is not the way you projected it to be, that you controlled. That's the part that that I'm having a hard time getting on board with.
Totally fair. I think part of what changed was a little bit of a push from probably Luka Doncic and his camp saying we need a center, right? From what we understand from reporting elsewhere.
Yeah.
And the Lakers throwing an extra pick in there and making it a deal that, yes, that pick may not come until whenever. That pick may be in middle school right now.
Yeah.
But they did throw another pick in and kind of sweeten up the deal, and the Jazz decided to agree to it. All right. We can be done with that. I think it's an interesting conversation. I think it's a fun one, and one that we could go on about. But I want to talk about the guys that are here, the guys that the Jazz do have on the roster, and what that'll look like come tip-off time. Richard Smitty Smith is in studio for the next segment, and we'll do just that right here on the other side. Still to come on the program, Sports Court, Utah Golf Radio with Paul Pugmire. All right here on Utah's number one sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. 4 o'clock hour of The Drive on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. It is Utah's #1 sports talk. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence Checketts today. Spence will be back with you on a Monday. You'll get ESPN radio programming tomorrow. That's Rich Eisen, that's Freddie and Harry, and you go from there. Plenty of stuff on the weekend as well. Richard Smitty Smith in studio with me to conclude this segment. Did you make it out at any U2 shows this summer?
No, didn't see U2. We who have we seen? We went. We are going to see next weekend. We're going down to Phoenix to see John Mellencamp.
Cool.
Haven't seen him in concert. Then right after that, here in Salt Lake, in a couple of weeks, we're gonna go way back in the Wayback Machine, Porter, in the 1960s to see the Guess Who are going to be at the Maverick Center. They have not played. Randy Bachman has not played a concert live of their music in 25 years because of legal issues. And so Burton Cummings and Randy Bachman are heading up a new Guess Who band, and they're going to be playing their music live for the first time in a quarter of a century, and we're going to go see them at the Maverick Center. And that's we're looking forward to that. That's gonna be a fun show to see. The night before that, we're going, just to show you that I'm a Renaissance man, Porter. Night before, we're going to be up at Deer Valley with some good friends to see the Utah Symphony play famous film music out in the outdoors at Deer Valley. So we're trying to cover it all.
There we go.
Porter, that's kind of how we do it. We shuck and jive all over the place.
I love it. Yeah, as much live music as you can get to, make it happen, especially when you have the taste that you and I have and share some of. There's some overlapping stuff.
Hey, we did.
Those guys are not performing forever.
No.
Get out and see.
We also did on our the river cruise we had on the Danube that we got back from a couple weeks ago. We actually spent 3 nights in Prague. And all 3 nights, we went to see chamber music, orchestra music in churches all throughout Prague. So you can go to all these different venues in Prague, chapels and churches and concert halls.
Very cool.
And see various string orchestra groups playing. And we got to do that 3 nights in a row, which was fantastic. What a great setting that is, especially in a great medieval city like Prague, to be right in Central Europe and to see that kind of stuff was really fascinating and exciting for us.
That's very cool. Yeah. My great-grandfather, shout out Stan, went up and down the Danube once upon a time, was not on vacation. He was with the 20th Armored Division. So he was on the clock, you'll say. Back there on the Danube River. Pretty cool spot. Yeah. I got to make it out there someday. When you look at the Jazz tip-off, as we mentioned, just now a few months away, we talked about the Kessler move. I want to get to now what we will see on the floor. What you saw from Darren Peterson in Summer League, more specifically, and we'll start with him, and how confident you are that he not only is ready to play in this league, but also ready to be a lead guard in this league, because those are two very different things.
Sure. Yeah. I'm a big Darren Peterson fan. I was thought that that's where they would probably end up in the draft. At least I thought that made sense for them. But he's a real top level NBA talent. He's got an NBA game, Porter. He can get off the dribble. He can play pick and roll. He can get into seams. He's a young guy. He's 19, so he's going to have some bumps and bruises. He's going to make some mistakes. He's going to make some poor passes. He's going to have a game like he had in the Summer League where he had 8 turnovers and trying to make plays either that aren't there or, in some cases, plays that were there, but maybe their teammate didn't handle it right, weren't expecting the pass, fumbled the ball, created a turnover. He gets the credit or blame, however you want to label that, in those kind of circumstances. But but I think he's got the kind of game that is being played in the NBA right now, where you have lead guards who can create, who can see the floor, who have good size, because he has good size at 6'5". He has a terrific length for his position. So all of that stuff plays into being able to play at the NBA level and be a productive player right out of the chute. The other part of his game that I like, that the Jazz sorely need, is on the defensive end.
Yeah.
He is a very active defensive player. He has great hips, great feet. Okay, he has active hands and he has a long wingspan. So when he's going to be active, and you hope that that's most nights, he's going to be bothering ball handlers, bothering the guys who are trying to play make for the other team in that regard, and that can be a big help to the rest of your teammates on the floor defensively.
Well, that's been one of the big downfalls of Utah's defenses in really the last half decade. You had Rudy Gobert behind you to back things up. You had Walker Kessler behind you to back things up. But the length in the backcourt against this new age of hoops, which is a lot of length in the backcourt on the offensive side, whether it was Donovan or Mike Conley or otherwise, Utah was outsized in a lot of those situations. And regardless of how hard you try, sometimes that's just something you can't contend with, right? You got to, in order to contend someone's jump shot and contest someone's jump shot, you can't be a foot shorter than them, right? You can't be giving up 6-7 inches. And I think that's a huge aspect of Darren Peterson's game that we haven't really seen here at Utah in quite some time, right? It's Dante Exum-like on-ball defense with a whole lot more potential on the offensive side.
Yeah, well, he's, the Jazz haven't, let's be honest, they've been one of the worst defensive teams the last couple of years in the NBA. Some of it, quite frankly, in my opinion, by design, because they didn't want to win.
Yeah, I agree.
So they weren't stopping the ball. They weren't stopping it in transition. Keontae George is one of the worst statistically defensive guards in the league. That's something he's got to show that he can do. I think he has the athleticism. I think he has the overall game to have some impact in that regard.
Yeah.
But he was being let off the hook, if that's what you want to say, the last couple of years, because they didn't really care how they were playing on that end, because they weren't trying to win games. Now they're on the clock, and so now they've got to start showing that they can make impression on that end of the floor. You've got Darren Peterson, who I think can be a very good defensive player on that end out front, trying to slow the ball down, stop the ball in transition, get the other team in the half court, let your own teammates get situated in the half court defense. And then you've got a guy like Jaren Jackson, who has been a defensive player of the year in the league. So he could help a lot on that second back line. And so now you've got your other guys you're trying to pull into the fray and say, hey guys, come along with us. Let's go. We gotta make things happen on the defensive end first, and then we can get out and play freely offensively if we can make that happen. So that's going to be the interesting thing for me, is to see that kind of growth, where they can get that as their season starts to get underway in the fall, because that's going to determine really what kind of play you're going to see night in, night out, and how competitive they really can be when they show what kind of defensive effort and defensive mindset they can show night in and night out in games.
When you are replacing a Walker Kessler, you bring in a top flight draft pick. Those are two spots in the starting lineup that are now up for grabs. Where do you see the starting five? I know that's not necessarily the most important thing. It's more about your rotations and your timing and how you use them, and your 7-8 guy lineup is more important than who is actually starting. But I'm curious what that looks like. Spence and I have gone back and forth on it a little bit. I think Lauri Markkanen, of course, Darren Peterson and Jaren Jackson Jr. are pretty safe bets as far as starters go. But then I do wonder, is that Jaren at the 4, Yusuf Nurkic at the 5? Or do you move that up a spot and Ace Bailey showed you enough in year 1 that he's a starter? Do you want to see Darren Peterson and Keontae George on the floor together? Or do you want to stagger their minutes? How do you see the starting 5, at least as of today?
Yeah, well, I think those are all legitimate questions, and I think those are going to be the questions that the coaching staff under Will Hardy are already working on. They're already trying to figure out what kind of lineups, and it could be, with the way the Jazz are, they don't have a set lineup in terms of being a top-level, competitive team. They're not a San Antonio at the moment. They're not an OKC. They're not a Minnesota. They're not a Denver. So they have some time to try and figure out what is going to be the best way for them to play. And it may be having different lineups night in and night out, depending on the matchups. Some people would say, well, the logical thing with the roster you've signed that you have here at the moment anyway would be to have Nurkic, Markkanen, and Jackson along your front line. Okay, that's a big front line. Okay, that can provide you some good benefits, especially offensively. But if you have that kind of lineup, who plays the 3? Who's going to guard the other guy's wing player? So that presents an issue itself. So now you bring in Ace Bailey into that conversation. Well, maybe he's a better matchup. Maybe it's better to have Nurkic coming off the bench. Okay, if that's the case, then who's going to play 5? We've heard that Jaren Jackson doesn't like to play 5, that it provides him with some matchups that he's not very comfortable with. And so now you've got that issue where you have to figure out what your rotations are going to be, who is best going to be in the starting lineup, who is going to best handle the responsibilities of coming off the bench. I've been a proponent the last couple of years. I still think that Keontae George is his most effective way of him helping a team to be competitive and to have a chance to win night in, night out is if he's coming off the bench as a 6th man or a second-team scoring guard to come off and try and give you a quick 6-8 points in the early second quarter because he can create and he can make some things happen with the ball in his hands. So does that mean you don't have him in the starting lineup? Does that mean you have Ace Bailey playing 2 and you have Darren Peterson playing 1? There's some people out there who think that Darren Peterson isn't really a 1, that he's more of a 2. Okay, that's probably true at the moment. But are you going to try and mold your team so that you're trying to figure out what works best? What kinds of mistakes can you allow you guys to play through and be willing to be able to absorb those losses that you might get along the way in order to better harden your group for the long haul down the road? So maybe you play Darren Peterson at 1, which he has said he believes he can be a starting point guard. Okay, so maybe he has a rough first year, but you let him play through it. Those were the same questions that we had Porter years ago with a guy named Russell Westbrook.
Yep.
He was coming out of UCLA. He's not really a 1. He's an undersized 2, but we maybe have to give him the ball in his hands and have to live with some of the mistakes he makes. Okay, so those would be the kind of questions that the Jazz coaching staff and front office are going to deal with going into the fall and training camp. And it's going to be interesting to see what they decide they want to try and do early in the season to see what kind of things they feel are working, what kind of things have some promise to be able to give us some kind of light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak, in terms of how we want to play long term and with the personnel that we have. And that's going to be the exciting part, I think, for Jazz fans, because they're going to see those kind of things being worked out in real time right in front of them during games. They're going to have a lineup on a Tuesday night against Phoenix that might be a different starting lineup on a Thursday night against Golden State. And so that's going to be the interesting thing, I think, to be able to see what kind of decisions they make in that regard and what guys they want to put out there in certain positions and let them figure it out themselves and learn through their mistakes.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. we got some time to figure it out, and of course the Jazz will be on the court trying to figure that out as tip-off approaches. Smitty, we're going to turn it over, talk some golf with our guy Paul Pugmire, but appreciate your time as always, my man.
Of course. Thanks, Porter.
We'll get you back in here with Spence here shortly.
Gotcha, man. Thanks.
Back on the other side, it is a little Utah Golf Radio, your Uinta Golf PGA Tour leaderboard update. They are wrapped up in the first round at the Rocket Classic in Detroit. We'll get the latest there, and then a little sports court to cap off the 4 o'clock hour. It's The Drive. Porter Larsen here, filling in for Spence Checketts on a Thursday on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. We're back. Live on ESPN 700, 92.1, it is The Drive. I am Porter Larsen, filling in for Spence on this Thursday afternoon. As we do each and every week, checking in on the PGA Tour with our Uinta Golf leaderboard update. Join Uinta Golf by Worldwide Golf Shops today for the latest deals on Ping, Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Mizuno, and more. They've got club fitting, 90-day satisfaction guarantees, golf simulators and hitting bays, full-service club repair and re-gripping, an indoor putting green, an experienced service professional serving Utah golfers since 1971. It is Uinta Golf and uintagolf.com. Joining us to discuss local matters and the PGA Tour, he is the host of Utah Golf Radio. You can hear him each and every Saturday from 8 to 10 right here on this station and the Rocky Mountain Golf Network. He is one Paul Pugmire of the First Tee Utah. Paul, how are you, my friend?
So good, man. You're good, Porter.
Been doing this a minute. I know all your touch points.
No, I appreciate it, man. You're killing it.
First off, what's the latest in the local golf scene outside of Patrick Fishburne and Tony Finau in the under par range on day one? What's got your antennas up in the local world today?
Well, there's just so much going on in Utah golf. And let's start with the Korn Ferry Tour is in Ogden for the Utah Championship.
Yes, sir.
And this is under various tour names back to the web.com and the Hogan Tour. This is the 35th year they've played this thing here in Utah. Along the way, we've had major champions John Daly and Zach Johnson both win this tournament. And it is a historic and significant stop on the Korn Ferry Tour, and they're at Ogden Golf and Country Club this week. Players around on the course right now. The afternoon wave is about halfway through their round, and we're starting to get a sense of how the course is playing. But it's an awfully lot of fun. We got a bunch of Utahns in the field, and some of them are doing really well.
Yeah, it's that's a legit event. There's $1 million purse on the line at the Ogden Golf and Country Club this weekend. Give us some maybe some big names that the Utah Championship was able to draw. Of course, competing this weekend with the Rocket Classic.
Yeah. So first of all, just a little context for everybody. The Korn Ferry Tour is analogous to AAA baseball, and so it's like in AAA. You get players who are on their way up to the show. You get players who maybe have been cut and bounced down from the show, working their way back. You get players coming back from injuries. And the difference between AAA and the major leagues is pretty dang thin. Same thing here with the Korn Ferry Tour. These are great golfers. There's 100 stories out there on the golf course this week. Interesting players, young ones making the climb. Including a teenager named Blades Brown, who was one of the top amateurs in the world in high school and just made the decision, I'm not interested in going to college. And so he turns pro when he graduates from high school. Now he's on the Korn Ferry Tour, and he's doing really, really well. So you've got young players on their way up like that, and you've got some older players. There's a guy from Oregon, grew up in Idaho, named Robert Garingas, who is 48 years old, trying to play his way, trying to get, back to the PGA Tour, but seriously, what he's really trying to do is get some reps in before going to the Champions Tour. So all that kind of stuff going on. And along the way, you've got some really good up-and-coming players. I mentioned Blades Brown. He is one to keep your eye on. There's Braden Thornberry, who was the NCAA champion a couple of years ago out of Ole Miss, and then you've a whole bunch of players like that. You've got a really good representation of Utah players. Daniel Summerhays, his nephew Preston Summerhays, they're both in the field. Ogden's own Mitchell Scow and Connor Howe, they're both in the field. Zach Jones from BYU played his way in. Just lots of these. Oh, and Carson Lundell from BYU. He played his way in as well. Both Carson and Zach were Monday qualifiers. Like I say, 100 stories going on in the Corn Ferry every week, and this week it's ours.
Yeah, a guy who's almost 50, a teenager, a couple of summer hays, and then a bunch of former Utes and Cougars and otherwise on the course. So a fun event and a legit prize for the guys who make it atop the leaderboard. Is there a better name in golf than Blades?
There is not. and what makes it so good is it was accidental, which means that we want it to be ordained by the golf gods, right? But it's a family name. His mother was one of the original class of WNBA players, and her maiden name was Blades. He was just given the family name, his grandpa's name. And turns out that he's a golfer, and so he's out there. I know, it's so cool. And I do want to say real quick about the Utah Championship. Come, people, come see this and bring your kids. Kids get in free, 12 and under get in free. And then otherwise, all the gate proceeds are being donated by the sponsors, Zions Bank, Intermountain Healthcare, under the organization of Utah Sports Commission. All the gate proceeds are being donated to First Tee Utah. Come and see these players play. You will have a good time.
Ross Steelman, Jay Card, and Kevin Doherty currently the leaders right now, and you can find that leaderboard up and available online. Let's turn it over. PGA and set you loose here. Yeah. The Rocket Classic. What's the word on the Detroit Country Club and the course these guys are playing this week?
I appreciate you asking about the Detroit Golf Club. It is one of the classic masterpiece golf courses in this nation. It's a Donald Ross design, and one that purposefully stayed out of the public eye for decades. Like I say, one of Donald Ross's best designs. Shortly after he built it, his brother Alexander Ross became the head pro there. But this wasn't strictly a nepotism thing. Alec Ross won a U.S. Open, and so a great player. He was succeeded by Horton Smith, who won a Masters. And so it's this classic masterpiece Donald Ross design. They've had incredibly great players as the head pros there, and yet they purposefully flew under the radar for years, and it was kind of this mysterious place. But starting in 2019, they started hosting the Rocket Classic, so we get to see it on TV now. And so, yeah, you want to see this because you want to see the PGA Tour players, right? But more than any other time, more than any other week of the year, watch TV this weekend to see this Donald Ross masterpiece. It's really a treat. And so Patrick Fishburne is tearing it up as we, after one round, he's in the top 5. And Tony Finau making some noise. That's kind of fun. Tony has won here before.
Yeah, Tony 2 under. And, hey, Zach Blair 1 under. So all of our Utah guys, I think those are our only 3 U-Pots, if you will, in the field this weekend at the Rocket Classic. And they are all under par through the first round. So a good start for the local guys. Ricky Fowler 7 under, Ryan Garrard 7 under, and yeah, Patrick Fishburne currently tied for 4th place. He is 6 under after shooting a 64. But how about Peter Malnati, 9 under, 61 on day 1 on a par 70 course. That is that's quite the round.
That's golfing the ball, baby. And look, this stuff isn't sustainable, but it's sure fun when it happens. And Malnati just torched the place this afternoon. Interesting story. He's been around on the tour for a long, long time. He is generally regarded as one of the truly nice guys. Everybody loves him. He went for years without picking up a win, but he got his first win this last year. An event that throughout his colleagues on tour and people who support these events, everybody was really happy. for him. It's fun to see him playing well again. We'll see how he carries it forward for the rest of the week. But yeah, heck of a round today.
Shot a 28 on the front nine, Paul,
Yeah.
and then had 2 birdies on the next 4 holes. He's not only 9 under, he was 9 under through 13. So just a really,
incredible.
really good round. No bogeys on the day for Peter Malnati. All pars and all birdies for him. We'll see how much he can keep that up over Friday cut day and the weekend. All right, Paul, let folks know what they can look forward to this weekend. Utah Golf Radio, I'm sure plenty of Korn Ferry Tour talk this Saturday.
We will be at Ogden Golf and Country Club for the Korn Ferry Tour here at the OGCC. We also, actually, Jan Brownstein, our co-host, and I will split up this Saturday because on the local Beehive Tour, the Valley View Open is this week. So Jan will be at Valley View. We'll be bringing you stuff from that. I'll be at the OGCC. We'll be bringing you stuff from this. And we're going to get you covered on all that's going on in Utah golf.
Paul Pugmire, he and Jan will be on air this weekend, as they are each and every Saturday. Paul, we appreciate your time as always. I'll set you loose. Have fun out there this weekend.
Thank you, Porter.
Utah Golf Radio's Paul Pugmire giving us the Uinta Golf PGA Tour leaderboard update. Visit uintagolf.com for all the latest on Ping, Titleist, TaylorMade, Callaway, Mizuno, and more. Or, hey, stop by one of their several Utah locations today. Back on the other side, we'll wrap things up and do a little sports court with our friends Preston and Garrett Handy, talking all the legal stories in sports right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Welcome back in. Drive time on a Thursday afternoon. You know what that means each and every Thursday here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We check in with our friends at Handy Law Utah and handylawutah.com. It is Garrett and Preston Handy. Fellas, how are we?
Hey, Porter.
Hi, Porter.
Gave you the wheel today, huh? Gave you the keys.
I know. They keep doing it. Despite better judgment, they keep doing it. And hey,
that's awesome.
With Sports Court on, I've got my gavel. I believe at one point, one of you guys or someone gave us a gavel. Spence never picks it up, but I've got it here. I've got it ready to go.
That may have been true. Yeah, that may have been true.
All rise. All right. Let's start here, fellas. Stanford football players are forming a labor fraternity for what they want to become a union. This is just the next natural step in college football and college sports right now, isn't it? I mean, there's no collective bargaining agreement like there is in pro sports, but guys are signing contracts, guys are signing deals, guys have agents. Seems like this was probably the natural next step.
Well, we're just on the threshold of potentially the last step. So what's happened here, a few Stanford footballers have started the ball rolling. This is just the first step to try and unionize, all join a union. And what they're doing is they want to start a campus chapter of the College Football Players Association. So the College Football Players Association already exists. It's been around for a few years. Not exactly sure what they do, but they're trying to start this chapter to unionize. And the goal is they want to unionize to address some of these issues. We know there's the NFLPA and the NBAPA and the MLBPA. And every few years, every 5 or 6 years, they all come to the table and they talk about issues affecting them. And they've got representatives and lawyers representing them. They talk about things. The main one we always hear about is the salary cap, right? And how the salary cap's going to affect the players. And then negotiate back and forth, like retirement plans, labor conditions. One thing I know that's hot on the NFL this year is the players really, after watching the World Cup, they really want grass fields, and they say that's going to be a negotiation point. So these guys are getting the ball rolling. There's some big hurdles there. Their hope is that they're going to have some stability. They say, we would like a collective bargaining with conferences and could have collective bargaining agreement that would standardize the issues of controversy we're seeing around college football. Problem issue is that some of these schools are the players. They would have to be deemed public employees,
right.
State employees, and state employees can't unionize. So that's a big hurdle. It would need to become. Players would have to jump in, and young kids, these are kind of young kids would have to head this up. One of the things they could do if they ever get unionized, they could strike. That's one of the hammers that unions use. They strike if they don't get what they want. So we talked about this. The Dartmouth basketball players, I don't know if there's anything behind the fact that you've got Stanford and Ivy Leaguers. These are the players that are sitting around starting this stuff.
There's something
the Dartmouth
there.
basketball players, they started this, and they actually were recognized as a union by the labor board. But then then they realized that some of the problems that was going to have, and it was going to be too big of a headache, and it kind of went away. But another way of settling this would be this federal law. We talked about the College Sports Act that's trying to get is kind of stalling right now. Makes me, one thing I think about, Porter, is some players may not want this. They like the Wild West. They don't like to have a salary cap. They don't want to have these limits to transferring this type of thing. They don't want normalcy, and there are some conferences, guess what, SEC, I don't know that they want that. They want to be able to spend the money and, get the players and that type of thing. So there's going to be some pushback on it, and this is just the start of it. We'll see what we hear about these guys and what legal challenges there are and what gets happening. But they recommend that there's a conference by conference thing. But I think it needs to ultimately be broad for the power conferences, a commissioner over that, not conference by conference, not school by school. So it's just an interesting legal issue.
Yeah, well, if you ask the SEC, they probably want to go back to the old days where they were just paying people under the table and no one else was able to do it as much. All right, Garrett, anything on this one?
Oh, just the only thing that is a little bit tricky about some of this is the National Labor Relations Board. I mean, these are essentially political appointees, right, that can change with administrations. And so some of this can become a little bit political depending on, who's in office, who's the president, and who they're appointing to their cabinet. Because Northwestern and Dartmouth, they never got approved by the NLRB.
Moving on to the next one, Las Vegas Grand Prix and Liberty Media agree on a multi-million-dollar settlement over the 2023 F1 race. What happened here, fellas?
Well, I mean, at its core, this is really a contract dispute. So if you remember, going back a few years ago, this is the first time the Formula One race was held in Vegas, so 2023 in the fall. And, people had purchased tickets to the first night was a Thursday night practice session. And what happened was not too far into the race, Carlos Sainz ran over some sort of water cover on the street that came up and got loose and caused some damage to his car, certainly, and other issues. And so then they have to inspect the track, and it caused a big delay. And ultimately, because of some of these delays, they just sent people home and canceled for the night. So people didn't get to see that race finish or the second practice race. So pretty soon after, a class action lawsuit was filed by the fans that were affected, and now there's a settlement that we just found out about. It's a $3 million settlement, but it is a class action, and so if you had a ticket to the Thursday night practice section or to you bought a 3-night package, you would qualify. There is an August 27th deadline, so if anybody's listening, you'd want to file that claim soon, but really the underlying issue here is hey, I purchased a ticket to see something, and you guys didn't deliver because you didn't have the race course in proper condition.
This one seems pretty straightforward, but Preston, if you have anything to add, we'll let you.
Yeah, just a couple of things, just a couple of little nuggets. It's my understanding this is settlement, this amount's been set aside, and, I'm sure these tickets were really, really pricey, so everyone's got to prove that they had a ticket and probably the price of their ticket. And I got to think some people are going to be getting compensated more than others, and I'm also guessing that none of them are going to get fully made whole. Another provision that people don't realize, whenever there's a settlement, there's always a provision in there that says they're not accepting liability. They're not admitting liability. They're essentially paying to buy their piece and have this thing go away. So that's a provision in all settlement agreements, that they're not accepting liability, they're putting it away.
Back to college football, Diego Pavia and Trinidad Chambliss, their lawyers have not been paid despite wins against the NCAA. Is this an issue between lawyer and client, or was there someone else representing these players? What's the lowdown on this one?
Well, when I first read the headline, I thought the exact same thing. I thought the lawyers haven't been paid, and are they trying to get paid by the NCAA? If there's a provision in there that says if you prevail on this, then you get your attorney's fees. But is it between them and the client? I thought that too. But just a little background. Two of the biggest, the most famous cases were Diego Pavia and Trinidad Chambliss. And they were represented by two different law firms. And in both cases, they were fighting for eligibility. They filed antitrust claims, but it ended with injunctions. Injunctions were granted by the court, which basically enjoined the NCAA from preventing their eligibility. And they both got, Trinidad is going to get another year now, and I think Diego got 2 more years. So in a case like this, you're not suing for a remedy. You're not suing for money. There's not a pot of, compensation there for the lawyers to get paid at. So the lawyers came out, and the 2 lawyers that represented them said, hey, we haven't been paid a dime. One of them revealed that, hey, my hourly fee is $1,400 an hour, and I charge 40% contingency fee. The thought was that, he would get a percentage of Diego Pavia's that year's earnings, and these are two big earners right here, two really big earners, and they'd get a percentage of it. But these lawyers both came out, and you know what they said? They said, we haven't been paid a dime, and that's okay with us. We're handling these cases, and they said, we got signed jerseys from these guys. And they looked out and said, you know, we represent a bunch of college athletes that, you know, they're not Diego Pavia, and they're not Trinidad Chambliss. They're earning hardly anything. So a percentage of their anything would be really nothing. So that's what I thought, but it's not. They haven't been paid anything, and they're okay with it.
Interesting. I'm going to go ahead and assume that Jeffrey Kessler's not working pro bono, but we'll see about that one. Garrett, anything here?
He got paid a lot in the House settlement for sure.
Yeah, those are $500 million attorney's fees in the House settlement.
Want to move on to the next one here?
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, this one is, and I told you guys to pause on this one for a minute because, of course, if you tune into this station, after we hang up, you hear ESPN. You hear ESPN radio. Well, one of their draft analysts and employees is in a little bit of hot water, and is so after news of what is a really horrific car accident. A bunch of other stuff came to light where one Matt Miller is being investigated for fraud in, well, probably a couple of different ways. Who wants to take the lead here?
Yeah, I'll jump in on that, Porter. What this arises out of is really he was in a car accident. He was in a bad car accident. June 17th, crossed the center line and went head on with a semi. It sounds to me like I think it was his fault, but he had very serious injuries. Yep. Ended up having his left arm amputated and broke a femur and some other injuries. Right, so very serious. As sometimes these things, as it happens, right, his family set up a GoFundMe and raised about $50,000. And so, that's kind of the beginning of the story. And I don't think he probably saw what was going to come from this, because what it did is I think it got people's attention who had prior dealings with him. And as this is in the news and realizing, oh, wow, Matt Miller's raising some money for charity. And this is a guy who, in the past, I feel like ripped me off and has scammed a lot of people. And so what it really turns into is for years and years, at least a decade, he'd been running these fantasy football leagues. And, I think the gist of it is he's collecting all these entry fees but not really paying out the winnings in these various fantasy football leagues over years. And so there's a lot of disgruntled people who have participated in the leagues that he's set up. And so the complaint gets made to the Consumer Protection Division in Missouri, which is under the Attorney General's office. And so they've opened an investigation. And what's kind of interesting about the whole story is, right, this really has nothing to do with the car accident and the GoFundMe. But all that did was send up a red flag and get people talking and complaining about this past behavior. So it's really a consumer protection legal issue and a probe that they're investigating.
Right, and just a couple things. There's a video actually of the accident. Very much was Matt was at fault. He drove headfirst into a semi truck, and that truck was outfitted with a camera, being a Freightliner. And also, yes, he was running these fantasy football leagues and not necessarily paying out them. He was also claiming that they were for charities, some of which he ran, and upon further, investigations, we find that some of these charities do not exist or have not existed for several years, don't have 501(c)(3) approval, all of the above. So, yeah, he's tied a web that he's going to have to figure out how to unravel, or he's going to be in some trouble here. I'll let you wrap this up if you want to add anything.
I don't think I have anything else. That was good information, Porter.
Let's move on to my guy, friend of the Cowboys, Tony Romo, arrested on suspicion of DUI, or I think in Wisconsin, OWI. Give us the latest here. It's kind of all over social media. His video of him warming up for the field sobriety test has made the rounds all over the internet. But give us the latest on Antonio Romo.
Are you a Cowboys guy?
Big time.
Okay, cool. That's good to know. Yeah, so if you haven't heard about this in the sports world, you've been living under a rock or asleep. Tony Romo was leaving a golf tournament, and he was pulled over for what was reported as some type of erratic driving. If you've seen the video, he appears pretty normal here. It was reported later that he had red glassy eyes and the odor of alcohol. But here's where it gets interesting. When the officer asked him to get out to perform some field sobriety tests, he won't get out, and he delays it, and he's sitting there saying, okay, and he's very nice. He's very nice, and he's very polite. And if you've seen his mugshot, he's smiling big. It's a great mugshot. But he says, I want to call my lawyer. I'm going to call my lawyer. And the officer's kind of saying, no, you need to get out. You need to get out. And he goes, I want to call my lawyer. And so ultimately he gets out, and he fails the field sobriety test. But he also refused to do the breathalyzer. Remember, Tiger Woods would not do the breathalyzer. And because of these, he was arrested, and he was cited with, erratic traffic, suspicion of driving under the influence, and he was also cited for refusal to take a field sobriety test. So he hasn't been formally charged yet, just cited. He has a court date in September. A couple of interesting things that I think came to my mind. Number one, if a friend of mine called me, I think Tony Romo's, he doesn't have a criminal defense lawyer on his speed dial. He's probably got his lawyer that negotiates his contract,
right,
who advise him. So if he can get him on the phone, if you don't practice criminal defense law, you might know it surface like, but you don't know the little details of it. And the question is, when does an interrogation begin? If there's an interrogation going on and you say, I want a lawyer, the interrogation needs to stop.
Legally,
this was a probable cause. This was a traffic stop. Was not being interrogated. Was asked to perform these tests. So where does the officer need to stop or not? I don't know the answer to that. But if a friend called me, I'd be like, I don't have the exact answers to that right now. The other thing I think is interesting, I heard a couple of lawyers talking about this. They said, hey, when I get a client charged with something like this, a DUI, it takes me a good month to get the video. And this thing's been released. They said, I think law enforcement is out there trying to embarrass him. This got out there really quick, and so that's a strange thing as well. But anyway, we'll see what happens. Probably, he's going to probably plead to some type of fine. He was also charged with open container. It keeps us kind of talking, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think that there's really little question. He probably had a drink or two. He knew he was, within his rights to not do certain things, maybe do others, and obviously wanted to talk to his lawyer. He was denied that opportunity, and then the actual field sobriety tests, he's saying, I'm hurt, my back, I've had a bunch of surgeries. Like, he's very much trying to, and he's being avoidant. So it's hard to say that maybe there was no guilt. What I also want to point at, I don't know if you guys watched the whole video, something that may help Tony Romo if this is ever presented in court. I don't know if you guys watched the video, but the field sobriety test instructions are usually real clear, real simple, real easy. You get out, you do them, you either pass or you fail. Usually you fail in those situations. I don't know if you guys watched, but the cop who was doing these, I don't know if she knew who Tony Romo was and was nervous, or if this was her first time doing it. Her instructions were very, very difficult, all over the place, kind of tough to read. Even me watching the video at work entirely sober, I was like, what does she want him to do here? And I don't know how that plays. You guys obviously know more than I.
No, I haven't seen that, and we don't know more than I, because we don't practice in this area. We don't wade into those weeds. The one I did see, it showed him kind of in a type of garage, not out on the road, kind of limbering up, doing a few things. That was kind of funny, but no, I haven't seen that part where he's getting the instruction. But the one issue is, it is a crime to refuse a field sobriety test.
Right.
That's been, I guess, codified. And so when you refuse that, same thing with Tiger. He refused that.
All right, fellas.
But I was going to say,
oh, yeah, go ahead.
Porter, I think that could give him something of a defense, right, in his case later to say, well, I didn't understand your instructions. I didn't know what you're talking about. I mean, yeah, you think I failed, but I thought you were asking me to do X, Y, Z, and it wasn't clear. So perhaps his attorneys, his criminal defense attorneys, can use that in a way to, something to help him with his defense.
Yeah, maybe guys check that out and let me know what you think. But, well, appreciate your time, as always. This was a fun one, talking the legal stories in sports. It is handylawutah.com to chat with Preston or Garrett over there. Fellas, give them the lowdown, what they need, and when might be best to reach out to you.
Yeah, Porter, we love coming on here with you and Spence. Missing Spence today, but love talking to you, talking about these legal issues in the world of sports. Handy and Handy, as everyone knows, been on here a long time. We're a personal injury law firm. That means that we represent and help people that have been involved in all kinds of accidents where they've suffered injuries and damages like medical expenses and pain and suffering. We take them through the legal process and make sure they get compensated. We'd love to hear from you. Call us at 801-264-6677 or jump on our website at handylawutah.com.
Thanks, fellas. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Porter. Yeah, bye.
Thanks, Porter.
That is Preston and Garrett Handy of handylawutah.com. Always appreciate their time. That'll do it for us on a Thursday edition of The Drive. I am Porter Larsen. Had a great time filling in for Spence Checketts over the last couple of days. We are both out tomorrow, so if you tune in, you're going to hear ESPN Radio, Rich Eisen, and then Freddie and Harry talking some off-season football, talking NBA, and going all over the map with those guys. Spence and I will be back as normal on a Monday. Have a great day. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend, and we'll chat with you then. For all the folks here at ESPN 700, head over to our website, ESPN700sports.com, or wherever you happen to podcast. If you missed anything from the shows over the week, or, of course, the Sean O'Connell show, Bill filling in earlier today, it's up there on the website or wherever you happen to stream. This is Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.